What's up, guys and geigers? I'm here with Luna, hey, to talk to you about monsters. Monster Theory, Part 5. Hey. So let's get to it, shall we? Monster Theory, Part 5. The monster polices, heavy word, the borders of the possible. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. The monster polices the borders of the possible. So this is very closely linked to the theory we talked about, the thesis that we talked about last time, which is Monster Theory, Part 5. The monster polices, heavy word, the borders of the possible. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. The monster polices the borders of the possible. So this is very closely linked to the theory we talked about, the thesis that we talked about last time, which is the monster dwells at the gate of difference. We're talking about gates. We're talking about borders. Aren't we now? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. So now what's the difference between a gate and a border? It just depends on how you use it. But this theory itself, we are talking more about how borders are being used by people in positions of power or influence to kind of arbitrarily set or create certain rules about normalcy and kind of discourage curiosity, discourage people from going outside the norms, not for their own good. I mean, that's the story, but for the good of those people who, so this is a little bit more about, less about protecting society and more about those systems of power. So these are some direct quotes from Cohen about the Jerome Cohen, who posited the 7 theses of monster theory. Are you happy? You look happy. And so he talks about how a lot of the borders are about punishing curiosity. Curiosity's punished more than rewarded. Monsters are used to kind of emphasize this. To step outside the official geography is to risk attack by some monstrous border patrol, or worse, to become monstrous oneself. That whole "if you gaze into the abyss" quote that's used in every horror movie since the 80s. I don't know. I myself, when I think about monstrous geography, the one movie that comes to mind for me is American Werewolf in London. And there's something about that movie that really struck a chord with me. Of course, 1981, the year it came out, also another great werewolf movie came out called The Howling. The Howling doesn't get as many props as American Werewolf, but The Howling is also something that I'd love to look at down the road, right? We need to look at The Howling. In American Werewolf in London, these two American tourists are told, don't go off the path or bad things will happen. And they accidentally go off the path and bad things happen. Yes, they do. And bad things happen. There are different other kinds of borders, like metaphysical borders, that are talked about in this thesis. For example, the violation of the host-guest relationship. Those borders of propriety, right? What is considered polite. And so, for example, there's I don't know how to pronounce this. There's a Greek personage called it's the guy that lycanthropy. His name became the root for lycanthropy. Lycan or lycaon. This guy was a host. He hosted a god, I think it was a god, and tried to feed him some people. And the guy went, you don't do that. And so he got turned into this monstrous wolf, but he still had some, it says he turns into a wolf and yet retains some traces of his former shape. I mean, in other words, he's the first werewolf, right? And so he was transformed into a monstrous semblance of that lawless, godless state, which is one way that we look at monsters. And this is talked about in I think it was thesis 3, when we're talking about how the monster can always escape because of its formlessness, its lack of order, lack of control. So in this particular thesis, we're talking about the possible. We're not only talking about breaking the societal rules, but also the rules of what is considered possible. Another example of this is Dracula again. We keep going back to him. Dracula, basically, because he had the ability to hypnotize, entrance women to do his bidding, and allow them to, walk around in their night clothes, being all wanton and stuff. Basically, that the reason that book was such a big hit is because people are reading it. They're not like, oh, those terrible women. They're like, oh, those poor women in their nighty nights, being controlled by that evil Count Dracula, and actually secretly enjoying the sexy bits. So if you look at the slide that I have here, I know it's all in Japanese, but just if you look at just the visuals themselves, you can see that the left, the green square, this is ordered society, it's normality, it's propriety, whatever, it's the possible. It's got layers, it's got hierarchy, it's got class, it's got organization, it's got distinct shape, distinct borders, distinct rules, easy to control, easy to keep your eye on, right? Easy to police, right? When the rules are all very firm and solid. And easy, yeah, so easy to control. And this is one of the reasons that we have such a backlash against the POMO, the postmodern idea, where maybe not all borders should be sacred as they are, maybe they should be more permeable. And that's why people are so upset with transgender, with trans anything. They're so upset with things that are different than the way they were before. But the fact is, the way they were before, they never were that way. But people have always tried to set these borders in place because as humans, there's so much we don't know about the world. So having some semblance, an idea of how the world is supposed to be ordered, like calms us down. We're like, oh, okay, all right, we're allowed to do this, right? And so we want to know who we are. We want to know why we're here. We want to know what we're supposed to be doing, and we want to know what we're not supposed to be doing, so we don't do that. And so I think that's why we tend to like these boxes. I categorize all the time. I think I spend a lot of my time as a teacher trying to explain things in easy, digestible bits. And you end up making these boxes, But now I do it with the idea that not everything's going to fit in these boxes, and these boxes are just for this specific point and not some inalienable thing, that inviolable thing that can't be, the borders can't be broken down. So that's the left. On the right, you have the outside world, right? We're still talking about, I think what I did in the very, 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 very beginning of this series, in the introduction, I explained a little bit how, you know, what civilization was, is people gathering together in groups realized that they had more of a chance of survival when they stuck together, and faced the forces of, faced against put borders up, walls up against the forces of chaos. And so what this right little cloud blobby thing represents is the impossible, the abnormal, the strange. There's no organization, there's no hierarchy to be seen, there's no tight established forms or borders or boxes or rules. It's not easy to keep an eye on, and it's very difficult to control, because like the blob slips through your fingers and, can escape through any kind of small cubbyhole, etc. So, we like the easily understood. It just makes us feel better. If you can get to a place where you are comfortable with the different, the strange, the border breaking, you have a lot less stress in your life, because life is often there to teach you that it cannot be put into an easy box. And when I say life, I mean nature, everything, the world, the universe, natural disaster we have layers of language, layers of thought, and we order the world according to what we are taught and what we see, what we experience. But every individual can only see so much, can only experience so much. So there's no possible way to take in all the information available. So there's no way that we can actually build an accurate picture of reality. And so, like I'm often mentioning, there's Jacques Lacan, his idea of the real, capital T, capital R, is the reality that we cannot accept, that we cannot see, that we cannot fully experience or understand, but sometimes breaks through the cracks. And I think natural disasters is something that throws the real into your face for a brief moment, and the trauma from that is something that can definitely it can do damage. Of course, it's trauma, right? To damage to, but what it's really doing damage to is that your set worldview. That's what it's doing damage to. So in a way, it can also open up possibilities. And I can talk specifically about all my experience here in Kumamoto during the earthquake in 2015. Not only did this whole community come together in a way completely different from the experience I had coming back to the aftermath of the Tohoku earthquake when I was living in Chiba. It just, in that point, my friends and we were able to support each other. We became closer in that instance. But here, I became closer with neighbors who I'd never talked to before. We went around helping people patch their roofs, etc. So I wrote a children's picture book to help kids deal with this kind of trauma. Um, and it was a life-changing experience for me. Like uh, for me, like this trauma has always been, and I know this sounds terrible and self-serving, but for me, trauma has always been something that has propelled me, that has shot me forward. Uh, in other words, I feel like, oh man, I'm living a finite existence. I am mortal. I have friends who died in their 30s. I have friends who died in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s. And I'm in my 50s now. And so, every time that happens, it's a really harsh reminder that if I want to leave my mark on the world, and I don't have to, but I wanna, then I better get moving. Right. Better get moving. So now why is this monster theory appealed so strongly to me is because I spent a lot of time in this purple cloud, kind of from the outside, looking into this ordered world and thinking something is very strange. It's the ordered world that's actually strange and weird, with all these restrictions and things that are pre-decided, not on a case by case basis, but as a like zero tolerance kind of way of looking at things. Everything's black and white and very clear, when obviously the past several decades have shown us that there are still so many things we need to talk about. And so one of those things, happily, has been the monster. And that's something that keeps coming up. So one of my, and I mentioned this last time, one of the reasons that I chose the name Gaijin Guy is Gaijin part is the outsider. And that's because I've often felt I was in this purple cloud in a world of chaos, and seeing the actual chaos of the way life works, and kind of enjoying it. Not always, but kind of enjoying it. It is chaos, and chaos doesn't mean that it means you're going to get whatever, right? Whether you like it or not, you're just going to get all kinds of things. It's like the jelly beans in Harry Potter, like, ugh. That would ruin my day if I got that jelly bean that tasted like sewer rat or something like that. So that's a little bit too much chaos for me. But my point is, the Jingai part is the non-human, but the Gaijin part is the outsider, not so much foreigner, but outsider. By being on the outside, I think it gives you a better picture of what's on the inside. You can actually see the strange, and I wrote this here in Japanese at the bottom. You can see the strange within the normal. And I celebrate this kind of thing. And I think that's why many people of my generation started to identify with the monsters. Not just be afraid of them, but also feel sympathy for them. And I think these are built in to a lot of these old classic films. Like, I just started rewatching The Wolfman from 1941 to talk about werewolves a bit, and try to see if there are any borders that the main character Larry Talbot broke before he ended up as a werewolf. And he kind of acted like a wolf. He was kind of predatory. His dad had this big old telescope, and he's more technically minded, more than scientifically. And so he was doing adjustments on the telescope. He was checking it out, saw this girl, looked in her window, creepy, right? Wolfy, predatory. And then immediately, because I mean, he saw like earrings on her nightstand or something. He immediately like went to the shop where she works that her father owns, and like, hey, where's the earrings? Where's the moon earrings you have? And she's like, what? How do you know about that? Oh, I'm psychic. Yeah. you know. Um, she was rightfully creeped out a little bit. She was like, "No, you need to go." But he still somehow charmed her into a date that night. But she very cleverly brought a friend uh, to the date. Uh, but yeah, so he kind of broke the border of propriety by spying, and he did come clean and but he also ended up uh, getting attacked by a werewolf, becoming a werewolf. Um, but the character himself, the I never realized on this rewatch how much of like I always thought of it as a clear-cut supernatural, got attacked by a werewolf, and so you become a werewolf. But there's a lot of, I think, support for the idea that it's in his mind, that he's convinced himself that he's become a werewolf. And maybe, because of his predatory tendencies in the first place, and him being 18 years away from his ancestral home and coming back after his brother had died. There's so much talk in this. Like most of the authority figures are convinced it's in his mind. In other words, they don't want to accept the reality of the monsterhood of this natural beast because it doesn't conform to their understanding of the laws of nature. But they kind of have a point, because it's kind of hinted in there that at the very beginning, when they show the definition of lycanthropy, they say that it's that in some cases, this is the hint, right? In some cases, the belief that someone has become an animal is so strong that physical changes actually occur. So, so is it supernatural or is it psychosomatic, where his belief that he is a werewolf is so strong thanks to the superstitions of the Romani people that are in the movie, that he um, actually somehow transforms into this wolf man. So it's really, this is one of those, there's a lot of these old movies that have this subtext that is not readily apparent. It takes, let me see, 40 years for me to see like, there's some other layers in this. So I think this thesis, the bordering of the possible, even though I didn't talk about it that much, we think about what the monster can do. The monster can do so much more. It has so much more freedom. And this is something that I touch on in my mermaid research, which I will eventually share with you guys. Not yet, though. We got to get through Oni first. And then I want to go back to talking to comics for a bit. However, this will tie in with the next, which is the monster is also this object of desire, because we desire the power of the monster. When we watch superheroes and we watch monsters, I think there's a similar thing going on, is that we desire that power, that the freedom that such power allows us to have if we had that power. So monsters don't have to worry about rules. They don't have to worry about structure. Now, this is something that we will get into when I start talking about Oni, is that Oni society has a lot more borders than a lot of other monster chaotic outside world situations. So anyway, enjoyed talking with you guys about this. I think each thesis gets more interesting and more exciting, and I get more rambly, so bear with me. Thank you if if you've made it this far. I really appreciate your joining me on this kind of sidestep through what the kind of content that I've been sharing with you so far. This is exactly what every content creator says don't do, and I'm doing it. So I'm breaking the rules. Okay, I'm breaking the borders of the possible, and I hope you enjoy the trip. See you in the funny papers. Bye, guys.